The champagne flutes are stacked in perfect pyramids on the table nearest to me, and I can't stop staring at them. Not because they're beautiful, though they are, crystal clear and catching the light from the chandeliers above, but because I ordered them. I picked them out of a catalog 8 months ago, ran my finger down the column of prices, and signed my name at the bottom of a purchase order that included 340 of them. My father is 3 tables away laughing at something my uncle just said. His bow tie is slightly crooked. I notice these things. I've always noticed these things about him, even when he stopped noticing anything about me. My hands are still. That surprises me. I thought they would shake. Let me go back. You need to understand what this family looked like before tonight, because tonight doesn't make sense without all the years that came before it. I grew up in a house where achievement was currency and I was always broke. My brother, 2 years older, first to everything, was the one who set the exchange rate. He got straight A's, so A-minuses were failures. He ran varsity track, so my swimming medals went into a box in the garage. He got into a good school on a partial scholarship, and my father drove him there himself, helped carry boxes up 4 flights of stairs, came home glowing like he'd done something important. When I left for college, my mother handed me a list of things she needed from the grocery store and asked if I could stop by before I drove out. That's not bitterness. That's just what it was. I studied business, hospitality management, specifically, which my father called learning how to be a waitress with extra steps. He said it at Christmas dinner my sophomore year. Everyone laughed, including my brother. I laughed too, because at 20 years old I didn't yet understand that you don't have to laugh at things that aren't funny just because the room expects you to. After graduation, I worked every job the industry would give me. Banquet coordinator, event planner's assistant, floor manager at a downtown hotel. I was meticulous and fast, and I remembered everything. Which vendor to call for last-minute linens. Which florist would actually deliver on time. Which client needed an extra check-in at the 2-week mark or they'd spiral. I was good at this. I knew I was good at it. At 28, I took out a loan that made my stomach hurt to look at, and I started my own event services company. Not a catering company, exactly. More comprehensive than that. We handled staffing, coordination, vendor management, the whole back-of-house operation that makes an event feel effortless to the people standing in the front of it. Within 2 years, we were doing corporate galas, charity fundraisers, a few small weddings. By year 3, we'd gotten our first contract with a luxury hotel group. I told my family about none of this in real time. My mother asked once what I was up to these days, and I said I was working in events, and she said, "Oh, that's nice. The way you say it when you've already moved on in your head." My father asked if I was seeing anyone. My brother sent me memes sometimes. That was our relationship. The call about the wedding came from my mother, not my brother. That should have been my first clue. "Your brother is getting married," she said, and there was something in her voice, a particular frequency I'd been hearing my whole life, that meant, "Don't make this about you." June 14th. "We'd love for you to be there, love for you to be there." As though I were a coworker they were being polite to. As though it might be optional. I said of course I'd be there. I bought a dress. I booked a hotel room in the city where the reception was being held, 40 minutes from where I grew up and a world away from where I live now. I marked the date in my calendar, and I didn't think too much about it. Because I'd gotten good at not thinking too much about my family. What I didn't know then, what I had no reason to know, was that my brother's fiancée had been searching for an event services company for 3 months and kept hitting walls. Her original coordinator had folded. The backup was booked. A friend of a friend had mentioned a company that was efficient, discreet, reasonably priced for the quality, good with last-minute logistics. My company. My operations manager took the call. She handled the initial consultation, the contract, the deposit. She is extremely good at her job and extremely professional, which means she does not ask clients about their family trees. The contract was signed under my company name. The bride knew the company. She did not know the company's owner was about to sit in the 3rd row at her ceremony. I didn't know either, not until 5 days before the wedding, when my operations manager mentioned the Anderson Walsh event as she was walking me through the weekend schedule. She said the bride's name. I stood very still for a moment. "What's the groom's name?" I asked. She looked at her tablet. She told me. I sat down. Here is what I did not do. I did not call my operations manager back and cancel the contract. I did not warn my family. I did not pull out of the wedding as a guest. I thought about all three of those things for approximately 48 hours, and then I made my decision, which was to do absolutely nothing and see what happened. My company would fulfill the contract. I would attend the wedding. If the two facts collided in some visible way, I would handle it then. If they didn't, no one would ever know. I drove to the venue on the morning of the 14th and did a walkthrough in my capacity as company owner, something I only do for our larger events. I spoke to the catering lead, checked the timeline, confirmed the dietary accommodation list. My staff moved around me with quiet, practiced efficiency. The venue was beautiful, exposed stone walls, arched windows, late afternoon light already planning its entrance. My brother had good taste, or his fiancé did. I left before the guests arrived, changed at my hotel, put on the dress. Navy, simple, knee-length, the kind of dress that says, I am not trying to be noticed. Fixed my hair. Looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. I am not someone who needs approval. I worked very hard to become someone who does not need it. But I am also not someone who would lie to you and say that walking into that reception hall, into a room full of people who were there to celebrate my brother, who looked at me and saw the sister, the lesser one, the afterthought. I would lie if I said that was easy. It was not easy. I found my seat, which was at a table with my cousin and some family friends I vaguely recognized. My parents were at the head table. My brother was radiant in a way I'd never seen him, genuinely happy. And some part of me that I usually keep very quiet was glad for him. Whatever happened tonight, whatever happened between me and my family, he loved this woman and she clearly loved him back, and that was real. The ceremony was outdoors. The reception moved inside. The dinner service began and I watched my staff work. Smooth, invisible, exactly as trained, and I felt that particular kind of pride you feel in something you built yourself. I was on my second glass of water when my father sat down next to me. He didn't find me by accident. The table shuffle after dinner had brought him close, and he'd chosen to come over. I didn't know yet if that was a good sign. So, he said, "What are you doing these days? Still in the events world?" "Yes," I said. "Still in events." He looked out at the room, at the centerpieces and the soft lighting and the perfectly timed service happening around us. "This is quite the setup. Must have cost them a fortune. I hope they found someone good to run it." He said it lightly, conversationally, the way you talk about a mechanic or a plumber, a trade, something technical, not something you'd consider an achievement. You know how these things go. Half these outfits overpromise and then the night falls apart. My mother had appeared at his shoulder. She sat. "We were just talking about the event coordination," my father said to her. "Oh, it's lovely," she said, looking around. "Very professional. I hope your brother's getting his money's worth." And then, to me, the way she might comment on the weather. "You work with companies like this sometimes, don't you? Do you know who they went with?" And here is where I could have said it. I could have smiled and said actually and watched their faces change. I want to be honest with you about what I was feeling in that moment because I think people expect a story like this to have a neat internal monologue. A protagonist who makes a clean choice for clean reasons. I didn't say anything because I didn't know what I wanted to say yet. My father filled the silence. He does that. He always has. "The thing about the events business," he said, and I could feel it coming the way you feel, Rain, is that it's always going to be a service industry. You're always working for someone else's moment. There's no," he made a vague gesture, "no ownership in it. You show up, you do the job, you pack up and leave. Nothing to show for it. Like a waitress," my mother said, and she smiled at me when she said it, and I understood that she thought she was being warm, that she thought this was bonding, a shared memory of an old family joke. 22 years old, sitting at a Christmas table, laughing because the room expected it. 31 years old, sitting at my brother's wedding, watching my staff clear a course with the precision of a choreographed sequence I designed, thinking about the contract in my company's files with my brother's address at the top. I said. An hour later, I stepped outside to take a call from my operations manager. A minor timing issue with dessert service, We were running 6 minutes behind, and she wanted a decision on whether to compress the transition or hold the original schedule. I said hold the schedule. The extra 6 minutes wouldn't matter. The guests were still at the bar. I was standing just outside the side entrance when I heard voices around the corner. My father. My uncle. One of my father's old friends from the neighborhood, a man I'd known since childhood. She's still doing that events stuff, my father was saying. Honestly, I don't know. She never quite figured out what she wanted to do. She seems happy enough, my uncle said. Happy enough, my father repeated. I suppose. She had potential, though. Real potential. I always thought she'd do something, something with more substance. Events is a tough business, the friend said, which was probably meant kindly. It is, my father agreed. That's the thing. You worked so hard in an industry like that and there's just a ceiling. Where do you go from there? At some point you have to face it, not everyone ends up building something real. I stood very still. The night air was warm and the sounds of the reception came through the walls muffled and soft, and I thought, not building something real. I thought about the contract, the deposit check, the email chain between my operations manager and the bride that spanned 4 months of logistics. I went back inside. I found my operations manager near the kitchen corridor. She raised an eyebrow when she saw my face. Everything okay? She said. Yes, I said. Everything is fine. I need you to do something for me, though. She waited. After dessert service is complete, I said, and the toasts are done. I want a graceful wind down. Full professionalism, full completion of contracted services, nothing left unfinished. And then I'd like us to wrap up and clear out earlier than the extended timeline we offered. She looked at me for a moment. She has worked with me for 4 years and she understands, sometimes, when not to ask questions. I'll make sure everything is done right, she said. I know you will, I said. That's why I want it to be us. The toasts were given. My brother spoke about his wife with a specificity and tenderness that made me think he'd been practicing for weeks. She cried. I cried a little into my water glass, and I let myself because he is my brother, and I do love him even when I'm invisible to the people who raised us both. Dessert was served on schedule. Plates were cleared. The transition to the late-night portion of the evening began, which under the contract would have meant a skeleton crew staying for an additional 2 hours of light service. Instead, at the precisely contracted end time, my staff began their departure. Quietly. Professionally. Every table bust, every borrowed piece of equipment accounted for. The venue's own staff would handle the last hour and a half, which they were equipped and contracted to do. We were simply not extending beyond our agreement. I was gathering my wrap from the coat check when my mother found me. Are you leaving? She said. It's not even I have an early morning, I said. Which was true. I had a corporate event at 7. She looked at me with that expression she has, the one I've never quite been able to name. Somewhere between disappointed and distracted. She said, your father and I were talking. We worry about you sometimes. You work so hard at this. A pause, a gesture at the room, and we just wonder if it's enough. If you're building towards something. There it was again. Building towards something. Mom, I said. We just want more for you, she said. That's all. We always have. I looked at her for a long moment. The room behind her was winding down, guests moving toward the dance floor. My brother somewhere in the middle of it all. The centerpieces I'd sourced. The linens I'd approved. The staff I'd hired and trained and trusted now packing up with quiet efficiency near the service entrance. I know you do, I said. I kissed her cheek. I picked up my wrap. The event company tonight, I said, keeping my voice easy, conversational, the way you talk about something that doesn't require any particular reaction. The one that ran all of this. Did you happen to catch the name? She looked puzzled. I don't think Why? No reason, I said. Just curious. Have a good night, Mom. Tell Marcus congratulations again from me. I walked to my car. The parking lot was warm and still, and somewhere in the distance, someone had left a window down and you could hear the music from the reception, faint and celebratory and very far away. I sat in the driver's seat and I didn't start the engine for a while. Here's what I want to tell you, because I think this is the part that matters, And it's the part that stories like this usually skip over. I didn't feel triumphant. Not exactly. There was something there. A quiet sense of reckoning, of the world briefly arranging itself into an accurate shape. But it wasn't the blazing vindication I might have imagined at 22, laughing at a joke I didn't find funny. It was more like finally getting to put down something heavy. My father found out 2 weeks later. The bride, my now sister-in-law, was going through invoices with her mother and mentioned the company by name. Said she'd been so happy with the service, she wanted to use them again for a fundraiser she was helping organize. Her mother looked it up. The company's website has my photo on the About page. It has been there for 3 years. She told my brother. My brother called my father. My father called me. I was at my desk when the call came. I let it ring once, twice, then picked up. Is it true? He said. No, hello. Yes, I said. A long silence. You never said anything. You never asked, I said. You asked if I was seeing anyone. Another silence. I could hear him breathing. I didn't know you. I didn't know it was that big. And there it was. That specific thing I'd been waiting years to understand. It wasn't that he'd been proud of me and hidden it. It was that he hadn't been paying attention. The size had been there the whole time. He simply had not looked. I know, I said. He apologized eventually, not on that call. It took another 2 weeks. A dinner I hadn't expected to be invited to, and a conversation that was halting and uncomfortable and real in the way that things are real when no one has rehearsed them. He apologized without excuses, which I hadn't expected from him. He said he'd been measuring everything against a version of success he'd inherited from his own father and never thought to question. He said he was sorry he'd made me feel small. I believed him, not completely. Not all at once, but enough to stay at the table. My mother was harder. She kept returning to, we always wanted the best for you, as though wanting was the same as seeing, as though good intentions were a substitute for actual attention. We're still working through it. I think we will be for a long time. Some things take longer than an apology to repair. My brother texts me more now. Real texts, not just memes. He asked last month if I wanted to grab coffee the next time I was in the city, just the two of us, and I said yes, and we did. And it was the first real conversation we'd had since childhood. He said he'd always assumed I was doing fine because I never asked for anything. I learned not to, I told him. He didn't say anything for a moment. Then he said, I'm sorry I let you. I still have the company. It's grown, actually. We brought on 2 new coordinators this spring, and we're expanding into a market 2 states over. The work is hard and unglamorous in the ways all real work is, and I love it in the same way I've loved it from the beginning, quietly, practically, without needing anyone to tell me it counts. On my desk there is a small framed print that I bought at a market 3 years ago, not because it's especially deep, but because something about it stuck. It says, build the thing. Let it speak. The thing I built did eventually speak. It spoke on a warm June evening in a rented venue with arched windows, in the soft efficiency of a well-trained staff, in a contract that had my name at the bottom of it all along. My father just hadn't known to listen for it yet. I've thought a lot about what I would have done differently. It's a question I used to return to often, especially in the months after the wedding, when everything was still raw and my father's voice was still fresh in my head. Not everyone ends up building something real. The honest answer is not much. Not because I handled everything perfectly. I didn't. There were moments that night where I wanted to be petty in a way that had nothing to do with quiet strength and everything to do with just wanting to be seen. I wanted to walk up to my father mid-sentence and say, look at what I built. Look at whose name is on the contract holding this whole evening together. But I didn't, and I think the reason I didn't, the real reason, not the cleaned-up version, is that I understood, somewhere underneath the hurt, that his acknowledgement wouldn't have given me what I actually needed. What I needed, I had already given myself. Years ago, in an office that was too small, with a loan that scared me every time I thought about it, on days when I questioned whether any of it would work. I built the thing anyway. Not for him. Not to prove anything to anyone at a dinner table. I built it because it was mine to build. That's the part I want to be careful about, because I think it's easy to hear a story like this and walk away with the wrong lesson. The lesson isn't work in secret so you can reveal it dramatically. That's not wisdom. That's just a story structure. The real thing, the thing I actually learned, slowly and not all at once, is that the people who dismiss you rarely have enough information to make that judgment, and waiting for them to gather it is not a strategy. You have to build without their permission. You have to keep records of your own progress even when no one else is keeping them. You have to be the person who knows what you've done, on the days when no one else does. My father apologized. He meant it, I think, as much as a person can mean something they weren't prepared to feel. My mother is still working toward it. My brother is trying, and trying counts for something. It counts for more than I expected it to, honestly. None of it erased the years of being the afterthought at my own family's table. But it changed the shape of things going forward, and I'll take that. The part that stays with me most isn't the moment of revelation. It's the drive home afterward, sitting in my car in the parking lot with the engine off, listening to the faint music from the reception and feeling not victorious, not vindicated, just settled, like something had finally landed in the right place. I think that's what integrity actually feels like, when you strip away all the language around it. Not a dramatic moment, not a confrontation, just the quiet of knowing that you did the work, you kept your word, and you didn't become something uglier in the process of proving your point. My father said I wasn't building anything real. I was. I just hadn't needed him to know it yet.